Hello everyone and welcome. For these notes, we are going to be talking about systems of inequalities. If you have access to a printer, please print out these notes. That's going to help you understand this skill. If you don't have access to a printer, if you have graph paper, go ahead and pause this video and grab that because that will be helpful in order for you to understand your answer. I also encourage you to grab some colored pencils if you have them, or highlighters. If you have both, please go ahead and grab both colored pencils and highlighters. That would be ideal. However, if you just have like another color, so if you have your pencil and a highlighter, that should work too. So let's go ahead and get started with the notes. The only way to solve a system of inequalities is by graphing. So that's what we're going to be doing. Right here, you have two inequalities on this graph. And let's go ahead and look at this first one. So this is going to create a solid line, not a dashed line, because it's greater than or equal to. And then since it's greater than, we are going to be shading above the line because with inequalities, we need to shade. Here is that same line. It's right here and it's solid and I need to shade above. So that's what I'm going to do in red. At this moment, just ignore the dashed line. Now in blue is going to represent my other equation. So since this is just less than, not less than or equal to, this is a dashed line. And since it is less than, we are going to be shading below. Okay, so here is this line. So it's dashed, as you can see, and we need to shade below. So you're probably wondering what your answer is. So right up here it says, let's solve the system of equalities below by shading the regions that satisfies both inequalities. So our answer is going to be where both the colors are, the region where both colors are. And if you can see right here, I'm going to actually grab my pen. You can see right here in this area, and I'm doing this in green, both red and blue are in this area. So I'm going to make this even darker. And a way for you to really show your teacher that this is your answer is you can draw a little arrow and write answer, because our answer is the region in which both inequalities are shaded. So this is really where those different colors are going to come in handy. So I'm going to use my first color for my first line. I know that this is going to be a dashed line, and that since it's greater than, we're going to shade above. So this is the first thing that I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to worry about the second equation. So my y-intercept is -3, so I'm going to put that on the graph. My slope is +3, so I'm going to go up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1. Once I have enough points to feel comfortable, I'm going to draw my dashed line, as you can see. And then I'm going to go ahead and shade above. If you wanted to test a point to be sure of where you need to shade, you can. But I know that this is the area in which I need to shade for greater than. Okay, now I'm going to grab my second color, and hopefully you are too. And this is the color I'm going to use for my second inequality. So this is also going to create a dashed line, and this also has greater than, so we are also going to be shading above. So my y-intercept is +1. My slope is a -2, so I need to go down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. If I want to go in the other direction, I go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. This is also a dashed line. And it's telling me to shade above the line because I need to shade the values that are greater than. So this would be considered above the line. Now my answer is the area in which both colors are in. So I'm going to darken this area and prove to my teacher that I know that this area, this region, is my answer, and I'm going to do that in green. If you have a third color, that's a great thing for you to do, is to really darken that area and show that this is the region where both of the inequalities, solutions to both inequalities exist. So this is my answer. Okay, let's go ahead and do the next one. So I'm going to grab my first color, and I know that this is going to be a solid line because it's less than or equal to, and that since it's less than, I'm going to be shading below. So let's go ahead and graph this first inequality. So there's not a y-intercept, so it's going through the origin, and my slope is 4, so I need to go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1, and I can't go this direction and do the slope again on this graph, so I'm going to go in the other direction by going down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. This is a solid line. And I need to shade below. Again, if you're not sure where to shade, you can test points, but hopefully you feel a little bit more comfortable with that since that's something that we have been doing for a while. Okay, let's look at our second inequality. Okay, so for this one, we know that it is going to be dashed because it is just greater than, and we are going to be shading above because it's greater than. So my y-intercept is positive 2. My slope is 1/4, so I go up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the other direction, I go down 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to create my dashed line. And I need to shade above this blue line, this blue dashed line. Okay, my answer is this area in which you see both colors. Again, by drawing it, that's the only way that we can show our answer for systems of inequalities. So I'm coloring it in green so that my teacher knows exactly where my answer is, where my solutions are. Okay, so unfortunately, sometimes it's not going to be that easy. Sometimes the systems are not in slope-intercept form, so we need to convert them to slope-intercept form before we graph. And we also need to remember that when we're dealing with inequalities, we need to flip the inequality sign after multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative number. So that may come up in the future. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this first inequality. And we need to move some things around in order to graph it. So I know that I am going to need to move my x's over to the right-hand side. And so now it is in slope-intercept form. This is going to be a solid line, and since it's less than, I'm going to be shading below. Right, so let's go ahead and do that so we don't get like confused and we don't know what to put on the graph first. So let's go ahead and put this on the graph. So my y-intercept is -1, my slope is -2, so I need to go down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. In the other direction, I go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, and it's a solid line. and I am shading below. So I am shading in this region. Okay, now let's look at our second inequality. Okay, so I'm just going to write it as is first. And then I know that my x needs to go to the right-hand side. So now I have 2y is greater than negative x plus 4. Divide by 2. And so then I have y is greater than negative 1/2 x plus 2. So now it is in slope-intercept form. This is going to be dashed. And it's greater than, so we're going to be shading above. So my y-intercept is positive 2. My slope is negative 1/2, so down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. And the other direction I go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. This is a dashed line. And I am shading above. All right, guys, so I need to make sure that the region that is my answer is shaded in so that my teacher can see it. So right here, this region right here is where both the red and the blue were. So I'm going to color this in green so that it stands out. And I'm even going to draw an arrow and write answer, because everything in this region are solutions to both of these inequalities, the system of inequalities. All right, so let's do another one like this where we have to move it around a bit and put it in slope-intercept form. So my first inequality is right here. I'm going to rewrite it. So when I rewrite it, I subtract the x, subtract the x. So then I have 2y is less than negative x plus 6. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. So then I have y is less than negative 1/2 x plus 3. This is going to be a dashed line. And it's also, since it's y is less than, we're going to be shading below. Okay, so our y-intercept is 3. Our slope is negative 1/2. So down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. And then it's dashed. And we are shading below. This one is really easy to see where you need to shade. And guys, try to fill in the whole area just because you don't know where you're going to have both colors. So you want to make sure it's fully colored in so you can see. All right, let's go ahead and get ready to graph the next one. So I'm going to write it down. Okay, so as you can see, I'm going to need to divide by negative 2. So since I'm dividing by a negative, there should be an alarm going off in your head right now. This is an inequality. I'm dividing by negative, so I need to flip my sign. That's the first thing you should do. I have negative 5 divided by negative 2. That's going to give me positive 5/2 x. That's my slope. And then 6 divided by a negative 2 is going to give me minus 3. This is going to give me a solid line, and I'm going to be shading above the line. All right, so my y-intercept is negative 3, so right here And my slope is 5 halves. So up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. And I can only have 2 points, so I'm just going to try my best to draw my solid line. That's pretty good. And then I am shading above. And as you can see, this area that's in kind of like the bottom left is our answer. So I'm going to use green to show that this is our answer. These are all solutions to the system. And I'm going to color it in so that my teacher can see it. So that is my answer. Now we are on the third page. This would be a great time to go ahead and grab a highlighter because we're going to need to, we're not drawing the lines, we're not graphing them. Instead, we are looking at them. We're doing the opposite of what we've been doing. We're looking at the graph and writing the system of inequalities based off of the graph. So we need to look at a few things. So when we are looking at these graphs, we need to look at what is shaded. So either is above or below shaded. We need to look at what type of line it is. So is it dashed or is it solid? We need to look at the slope, and then we also need to look at the y-intercept. So those are the things that we should be looking at in order to figure out what our inequality is for each of these lines. So I'm going to use a highlighter. So I'm going to use this yellow highlighter to highlight one of these inequalities because this is the first one that I'm going to focus on. So I'm going to focus on this one first. Okay? And then I'm going to make this area yellow so that you know that I'm writing the inequality right there. Okay, so I know that I'm going to have y, and I know that I have a dashed line, and if we look at this gray area is below this line. So since this gray area is below this line, I know that I'm going to have less than, and I'm only going to have less than and not less than or equal to because this is a dashed line. So I'm going to have y is less than. Now I need to look at 2 points on this line. So here's a point, and here's another point. When going from left to right, how do I get to this point? Well, I go down 1, 2, 3, and I go over 1. My slope, if I'm going down 3 and over 1, down 3 and over 2, then that would be a negative 3 halves x. And then right here, this is my y-intercept. That's where that line goes to the y-axis, and that's positive 2. So here is my inequality for that line. Now let's go ahead and look at the other line. And I'm going to use a red highlighter for that. So we're going to look at this line. I'm going to highlight this area in red. Okay, so now that we're looking at this line, we see that it has a positive slope, so we can keep that in mind. We see that it's dashed, and we also see that the area below this line is what is shaded. So it's the same thing as we had with the last inequality, the area below. So we're going to also have y is less than. Let's take a look at 2 points to try to figure out our slope. I'm going to use red so that this doesn't get confusing, okay? So here's another point, and to go from this point to that point, I would need to go up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. If I rise 3 and I go over 1, then that means that my slope is a positive 3. And then this has the same y-intercept as the previous one. They both intersect. the y-axis at positive 2. Okay, real quickly, it doesn't really matter the order in which you write these. As long as you have both of them, then you are good. Okay, I'm highlighting to keep it nice and organized, but if you wrote it the other way around, that's fine. All right, let's go ahead and look at the second graph and try this again. Maybe challenge yourself and try doing it on your own. That would be great. Okay, so this first line, let's go ahead and look at this one right here. I'm using blue this time. Okay, so we know that this is going downhill, and so this is probably going to have a negative slope. It's a solid line, and we can tell that the area that's shaded is above this line. So I'm going to have y is greater than or equal to because it's solid and it's shaded above. Now let's look at 2 points to try to figure out my slope. Here's 2 points. To go from the left point to the right point, I go down 1 and over 3. Then that means that my slope would be negative 1/3 x. And then where is my y-intercept? Well, we already have a point there. It's at positive 2. Okay, now let's look at my other line. So I'm going to use green for this one. Okay, so we know that this line is dashed. It has a positive slope. We know that what is shaded is shaded above it. So we're going to have y is greater than, but that's it because it's dashed. Let's look at 2 points in order to figure out my slope. So I actually put 3 points because if you go up 1 over 1, you are at a point. So this means that this just has a slope of 1, so we can just write x. And then my y-intercept is right here. It's at negative 2. So there is your inequality. All right, guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful to you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Reach out to your teacher if you have any questions.